Hello, welcome back to another episode of Show Up with Sarah. And my guest today is someone whom I have actually I've tried to meet in person for a number of years, actually. And much to my own issue, because her shop used to be literally 2 blocks from me, and I never managed to get in there when she was there. But I am very happy to have her here because she is a big part of the Denver community and she is an awesome human person. I would like to introduce you guys to Erika, also known as the Hope Lady.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So yes, you had a shop, a physical shop called the Hope Tank, and it's my understanding of it, and what I loved about it is that it was kind of this mix of like Denver gift shop, but also like small business pushing, empowering, whatever you may need shop, which is like maybe probably like not a really good, like I know it's like a gift shop, but it's like because you sold, I got shampoo there, like there's soap there are posters there, like so it's so all encompassing. And so how do you describe your shop?
Yeah, so Hope Tank is a gift store that gives back. So everything that we sell helps us highlight and connect people to something happening in community that has impact. So whether it's a nonprofit or a small business or an action, that's what we do. And yeah, we sell a little bit of something for everybody. The goal is, we're all buying gifts all the time, and so why not meet people where they are and help them connect to justice work
Yeah.
um, in a way that's really fun. So yeah.
So when I've been there, and to further kind of what you're saying, like so I went and got not a shampoo but a conditioner for curly hair, which made me really happy, which I do love actually. It's great. But it's by a person of color, which made me feel like okay, I'm actively being able to show up for my personal community and get something that is made for my hair. And with like so many options online, it was kind of nice just like walk in, see, like, because I think you have like the picture of who owns the business
Manushka.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, this is yeah, I
Yes.
what is it called? The
Chubby
curve.
curls.
Thank you. I was like, I should
Yes.
actually say the full name. But yeah, Chubby Curls.
Yes.
And yeah, like it makes it just kind of easy to be like, oh, I definitely know, especially in this like time where like for me personally, it seems like every other month some female black owned hair product or makeup or skincare is bought out, and then like I just get the memo at some point where people are like, we're boycotting them, and I'm like, okay, like who are we now doing, like, so the fact that you had the person, the photo, the business, everything, like it was just very cool. And then the other side is that after I checked out, like, the cashier, your business, you guys put like a little sticker in there. You're like, hey, this
Yep.
is what you're directly contributing to.
Yes.
And so the reason why I wanted you to be here is because that's a very aggressive form of showing up. And when I say aggressive, I mean because we do a lot of indirect showing up these days, where you hear about like a GoFundMe and you're like, oh, I'm going to give $10, right? Like I did it. Or you'll like pick up a piece of trash and you're like, pollution, I did it, like, but this is you as a what you appear as is a white woman just deciding, hey, you know what, I'm not only going to open this business, but I am going to make sure that I'm giving back to the community. I am empowering different people who may have a harder time getting their voice out there. What made you decide like I'm going hard,
Yeah.
in the showing up?
Well, so I am a social worker by trade. So I I worked in several different areas of impact in social work, which is partly why I was drawn to social work. I knew I wanted to make a difference. I knew I had been the beneficiary of a lot of interventions in my family and people who showed up for us during really difficult times. And so I always was really drawn to helping people. And initially that was medicine. And then I discovered social work, and I was like, oh, this is actually a way where if I find that my strengths are not in a particular area of serving people, I can actually shift, which is what I did. So I worked in the juvenile justice in quotes, for those who know, working in that system. I worked predominantly in foster care with older youth aging out of care. I also worked with older adults here in Denver, lower income older adults who were a part of a program that was phenomenal called the Foster Grandparent Program, where they place lower income older adults in these like paid volunteer positions with kids. It's incredible.
That is cool.
So I was doing all this work, but I also was always very interested in business, and so it was sort of like getting tired of hearing people say, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. Oh, this is so heartbreaking, or whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
it's so like, you're such a do-gooder. I am very cognizant of being a white woman, often in communities that have been marginalized by people who look like me. Mm-hmm. And so what I decided to do was sort of find ways to connect people to say, no, actually, like, you are a part of this. And it's really not that complicated. Foster care, for example, is one of these areas that people do not talk about. Like, it's a messy, very difficult. It's a system I think should be abolished, frankly. And I was a foster parent. I was also a worker. But what I wanted to do was show people, like, these kids are in your communities, they're in your schools, they're in your neighborhood. These children, quite frankly, like, we need to understand more, like, what's happening. And so what I wanted to do was find a way. What I have learned over the years is if you make people feel shitty, they're not going to really be moved to action. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like, me saying, how do you not know about this is not going to work. But me saying, hey, did you know XYZ, and here's how you can kind of be a part of it. That was a much easier way to kind of get people hooked. And so I loved giving gifts. People would always ask me, like, where'd you get this thing? And it almost always had a story. And so it became just really clear, like, okay, well, everybody's buying a baby shower gift. Everybody's buying a birthday present or whatever. Let's meet them where they are and make it really simple. And so it's also a part of why we, like, when people come in, we would greet them with what we're about. So they were already understanding what we were about. And then at checkout, you would get that sticker, but you would also be told by our staff, like, hey, this is this organization, this is what they do. And we're very, very particular about the organizations that we partner with. Mm-hmm. Again, because I was a social worker, I am real hard on these organizations. So I have, 10 years of doing this, people trust me. And so I have to be really, really careful, like, what I recommend. Yeah. And the same goes for micro businesses. I feel like micro business is a way that is really undervalued as an indicator of how our community is doing. So if a micro business can't survive in a community, that to me is like the canary in the coal mine, right? Like, what's happening? Like, why? Like, we got priced out of our space. That's an indicator. But also it's a way to empower people, right? So we have, as a country, we talk about, like, self-determination. Well, if you're able to, take care of your family or yourself, you're able to, like, maybe take a vacation once a year, you live in the community in which you have your business. To me, that's actually incredibly important too. And so that's where a lot of my efforts and my focus has shifted, is understanding really deeply, like, me supporting, Chubby Curls, which is a, Black woman-owned business, a natural product serving natural hair, but also frankly serving everybody.
Yeah.
That's actually really critical. That says a lot in our community. So that's kind of, the why and the how of it.
It's so funny because I was just talking to a friend this weekend, and I was like, because the thought about moving has been coming up for me, and the desire to just have a more diverse area, and I was like, it's funny because Colorado has been a nice break in terms of like we have a great governor that is progressive, and I feel safe with like healthcare and whatnot. And I feel safe like downtown, but I was like, it is also funny because you have a lot of people here who feel like because they live here, that means that they're progressive and they know things, right? And I'm like, you'll bring something to them, and you'll be like, hey, just so you know, like this thing that you said, and they'll be like, I mean, but I'm an ally, and I'm like, no, that's super great, cool. Just also and they're like, well, I guess I'm just like everybody else, right? And I'm like, and you'll tell people around here different things, and they will. I don't know how you live like this. And I'm like, I don't know. You live like this too. We all actually live like this. Like this,
yes.
We all are in it, like, and so it's funny that you mentioned that the like meet people where you are, because that conversation was spurred on by this post I saw on Reddit that got me really thinking about how we communicate and what is our responsibility and what someone else's responsibility, and when we are able to hand those things off. And the post was about a study that was done that shows how, like, if we use, or we shouldn't be using the term white privilege, we should be using terms such as like phrases such as like things that you don't control but you experience. And all these commenters were like, yeah, no one wants to be told that it's their fault, and da, da, da. And I was like, like half of me is like, yes, I get it. And obviously if I want people to buy into it, I have to meet them where they are. But then the other side of it is like, how much longer are we in charge of gently bringing something to you and be like, can you care about this? And then people are like, I need you to do it a little softer, right? And so it's just funny that you mentioned that, because I think the thing I really dig about what you do is that it's kind of like that space for me where I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so tired of being like, we just listen to this, like, whatever. But then I'm like, nope, like I have to show up for this because I have a niece and I have nephews and that I want to have things better for, right? And you seem to be that go-between where it's like I actually can do some of the work of meeting my fellow white people where they are, like. And so when you have, because with your experience, I know you have been tired fighting for things and like between foster, between working with the justice system, between working with probably unhoused people, low income people. I know you have been tired. So what helps you keep that fire and keep that I don't want to say fuel tank, but like, how do you keep being like, yeah, I'm gonna keep showing up. I'm gonna keep showing up, even though I'm sure there are days where you're like, I may punch some people. Like,
It's tricky. I don't know. There was a lot in there that I respond to. I will say my journey of like being, getting to where I am now in how I show up as a white woman in spaces of like conversation around privilege or white supremacy or what have you. I struggle all the time because I'm an East Coaster. I deliver things sometimes in ways that do not work for people.
Yeah.
And my response to like what you were saying is like, you really shouldn't have to be doing that labor. Like, people understanding that people of color explaining and deciphering for white people what they are experiencing is labor.
Yeah.
It is part of white supremacist culture. So it's like, I actually, when I start to feel like, oh my God, what am I getting anywhere? I then have to pull back and go, that to me, that is white supremacy. That's me saying, if I feel like it, if I'm too tired of dealing with this, I can always opt out. That's the difference. Yeah. So when I feel like that, I have to just like kind of check my head. And frankly, I do the same with like parenting, right? Like I've been a single parent for a really long time. I've got 2 young kids. And I will have these days, right, where I'm like, this is so fucking hard. Yeah. And my kid, I'm like, just put your shoes on, and you know, and they're fighting with each other or whatever. And then I stop myself and go, okay, wait a minute. There are people in my life who would literally kill to have that experience right now. Like I think that because I've been exposed in my life to very difficult things, and because I surround myself with people who have had way more difficult things to endure, it helps me check myself a lot. Like I have had friends who've had stillborns. I have had friends who've had, you know, a really hard time with kids. I have friends who don't want kids. I have friends, you know, family members and things. And so, you know, at some point to me, it's always like, I got to ground myself back in and go, okay, wait, what perspective am I coming at this with? I will say liberal white women are the most difficult human beings to do this work with. Like we are horrendous. We are, and until we're willing to say we and be like, okay with, like, you don't know if I show up, you don't know me. I might be a dangerous white woman. I might be somebody, I am always capable of one step of feeling uncomfortable and feeling embarrassed. Yeah. And I feel like the part that people forget when they talk about Karens and Becky's and all this stuff, like we actually can get people killed. Yeah. So we are dangerous in our feeling spaces. So like, to me, the most dangerous person is a white woman with great intentions who is called out for something that made someone feel like shit. And then they feel embarrassed, uncomfortable, and then they just drop everything and they go, well, fine, you know, then I just won't do it. Yeah. And that is unacceptable. So I walk a line. Like I have made a lot of people cry. I make people uncomfortable, but for the most part, I have people, even the people who find me very challenging, they will circle back and be like, oh my God, you know, like 2 years ago, you said this thing that just like, you know, made me so angry and so defensive. Yeah. And now I get it. The same goes for foster care. It makes people very uncomfortable, if especially white parents who have like adopted kids of color. Like I have very strong feelings about it. I'm very careful, and I have lots of, you know, people in my life who have adopted kids out of foster care, what have you. It doesn't really change my opinion because I've seen what happens. And again, we're talking about systems. So the goal for me is that I have sort of two areas I play in. One is Hope Tank, which is like, it's fun. We sell goofy, silly things that like, okay, you want to rock, you know, a pair of knee-high weed socks. Yeah. I love it. Like that's your entry. But then I have the work I do as like that Hope lady, which is consulting and working with people and working with companies and working with organizations on like, let's dive in deeper on how we do this work. And I do not do diversity, equity, include. I am not a DEI work. I'm a white woman. Like that's not my place to be doing that work. But what I am often is an interpreter. So I seem to be able to say, I hear what you white woman with great intentions is saying, and then I see what's actually the result of that. And let's find a way to do it more effectively, more equitably, or whatever that looks like. So that's where I can push a little harder. Yeah. Is like, hey, you hired me to like come in and tell you the truth.
Have you ever seen the show Woke? Yeah. So I was actually laughing so hard in the episode where the lead character, he calls out this Wi-Fi or cell phone company because they use MLK, and they call him in for a meeting, and they're like, did any of you think about this? And they're like, oh, well, we passed it by. And they like reference the one person of color who I believe is an Indian man. And he was like, seriously, and I just love the fact that he was like, if it's just him in a room of you guys, he's still not going to speak openly, like,
Wow.
and it made me, the reason why it made me laugh is because I thought there's probably so many people who probably need to see that, just that clip, because they probably are being like, you know what, with everything that happened in 2020 and 2021, we're diversifying, and this is the one person that we can be like, is this racist? And that
Yep.
person's probably like, I don't know how to say this without losing my job. So
Well, and just that, right? Like I will often say, like, please do not hire anybody yet. Like, you're not ready. You're going to cause a lot of damage.
yeah,
It's going to backfire. But at the same time, I feel you. Like when people talk about George Floyd, I get kind of furious because it's like George Floyd is not the moment at which our country was a problem. Like, this is not new. And so it is frustrating. And so I have shifted for myself, instead of saying like, where have you been? I just say kind of like, hey, I want you to really consider why you just arrived. Like, I'm glad you're here, but it's really
write
important
that down because I
to
love
like
that.
reflect.
Yeah.
Like, what about this? Why did it take this horrific, extreme public situation? And a lot of it is around like bystander apathy, right? Like, if
Yeah.
we see people continuing to, like, I mean, I have to call 311 here, like paramedics and things all the time. And because somebody will be like laying in the street and literally no one, they just walk over them. And, I go, well,
Yeah.
shit, if this was me, I would hope someone would stop. But we don't, right?
Yeah.
We're in our, and again, that's understanding systems. And that's where my social work kind of brain is I never don't have that lens. It's always there. I cannot take that lens off.
Yeah.
So whether it's business or personal or whatever, I'm always going to notice. I'm going to notice how many people of color in a room. I'm going to notice who's at the table. I'm going to notice how they're showing up. I'm going to notice how people are behaving in a different way.
And I was just thinking while you were saying that is a type of privilege too. And like, there is like, people think that when we talk about privilege, we are always kind of like denouncing it, but the fact is that technically being able to have a lens that you can't take off, but being able to like look and be like, you know what, like I see some things that maybe some other people don't, just because of my experiences, it means I'm more in tune or I'm more in connective, whatever. And the fact that you're like, I'm aware that I am a white woman, I do have the space to kind of push against some things. Like, it means that you have the privilege to create a little more change than someone else, right? And whenever I do talk to people about privilege, I go, listen, like, it's not like I'm saying you like, oh my goodness, like you're white, so your privilege is bad. I'm like, I am a light-skinned Black woman. I would not want to be a Black man, and I would not want to be darker skinned because I know it's harder. Like, I don't have, I love my darker skinned people. I love Black men, but I also know what it is to be a dark skinned person in this country, And so I go, like, I have the space where if something was going on and it's between, like a white person and a dark skinned person, I get to be in between that. And so I'm like, that's privilege. It just, like, it's not bad. It just means that there are some experiences that I can't immediately relate to. I may get the gist, but I can't be like, yeah, I've walked those shoes, right? And it's funny because quite literally, like, so I did a panel on Thursday and I was talking to a woman and we were talking about soft space, which is something that I have in my book. And she was like, can you explain it a little bit better? And I was like, well, here's the thing. I was like, safe space is if I walk into this room and no one's going to yell at me about being Black, no one's going to yell at me about being straight, no one's yelling at me about being a woman. I was like, I'm safe. And I was like, but soft spaces, if then I start talking to you and I go, man, I'm having such a hard time. I may need to give up my business. And then I start to get emotional and you're like, hey, you are a strong Black woman. You got it. And it's like, okay, I guess I won't get emotional. Let me pick myself back up. And I'm like, now, like, I don't have that soft space to just show up. And I was like, and it's funny because the reason why I even started thinking about the idea of soft space was because I spent a lot of time on Reddit, probably more than I need to, but I'm on the subreddit Black Ladies, and they were discussing this idea that it's even perpetuated within the Black female community that white women just have so much space to be emotional, and it seems it's like totally okay. And for some reason, like when we see a white woman cry, we're like, yes, no, yes, emotion. But then like it feels so weird to do it yourselves. And we were discussing this dynamic of how even when we are in a space of other Black women, we still have to be like, you know what, but like this isn't what our ancestors fight for. Or, like we have to be tough, or like we have to. And it's just like, is there ever a time where it's okay for me to just cry and people are like, yes, emotion, beautiful? Or is it always going to be like, this seems weird, she must be really struggling today, like maybe I just cry every day, I don't know. And so I was talking to this woman and she was like, you cannot offend me, I'm actually so happy they're saying this. And she goes, and then half the time, if you're probably telling me something, I start getting emotional because I'm emotional for you. And I was like, yes, it is very weird to have to like deal with that, because then it's really not about me anymore. And so it's just interesting to that I've recently been having these conversations, and then to be able to talk to you about this, which I'm leading this to my next question of how, when you are a single mom and you are a business owner and you're a consultant and you're taking care of a whole city pretty much, how do you allow yourself soft space? What does soft space look like for you? How do you show it for yourself?
I don't. I don't. I mean, I think something that I've been really, thinking about a lot more is like, how I am setting really poor example, honestly, of like what it looks like. And so I'm taking my first legit vacation in like 15 years this summer with my kids. And I'm so anxious about it, and like I'm a wreck. And so yeah, I mean, I am not a good example of what that is, because the truth is, like, when people say, I don't know how you do all of it, it's like, well, I'm not bringing in enough money. Like, I literally just changed my entire business model. It's brutal. It's like starting from scratch. And so it's funny, I have so many Black women in my life who reach out to me, and so part of it is, how do we create those spaces where, I'm very interested in that, of like, we as micro business owners are very different than a small business, because a small business could be like 500 people.
Yeah.
And so part of my new location is a community space. That was critical to me. And for me to be able to create spaces where literally, like, I just had a meeting this week with, 2 Black women, a mother and daughter, whom I've done all these different things with. And they both like, the mom is a maker and she does teas and all these other things. And then the daughter wants to do more of these events, and talking about, well, how do I offer up my space so that they can have an event or a gathering that is about healing, that does not have any white people. Like, they have the keys and they come do the thing. Because I do think it's important that we create those separate spaces where folks can be like real.
Yeah.
And then for myself, it's funny, like, I literally just had someone reach out saying, what do I do? Like, how do I ask for help when we're supposed to put on this show on social media? It's like, I got it all figured out. Like, everyone thinks I have this thing, and I don't need people to spend money. I don't need people to hype my stuff. I don't need people to engage. Well, that is like, I'm going to disappear if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
And so how do I show up? And I said, well, shit, if I figured it out, I would be doing it. Like, I'm not. I'm, my health has taken a huge hit. I don't always feel like a very great parent. I don't feel I have an incredible partner now. And like, I don't always feel like I'm showing up very well for him. And so I do think we need to demystify some of this stuff, because it is just more colonization. This is us saying we got to work our asses off. We got to hustle till we just drop. And I do like, I have a TikTok issue. I love TikTok. I'm not creating stuff on TikTok, but I'm consuming.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love that people are really creating content that is more about like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like, this isn't reasonable. I will say I have an incredible community of people around me. Like, I have all these people that I can just text, predominantly other small business owners, where I'm like, I'm freaking out. What's happening? What are you doing? Apply to this grant. Like, we help each other. I need a stroller. Like, we help each other. And so that is my strength, is, okay, I know I have all the people around. How am I helping to show up for them, but also asking for what I need? And I will say, for the first time ever, obviously I experienced a very public, very horrific trauma recently with my friends being killed. And it is the first time ever that I legitimately, like, I couldn't show up in the ways I would normally show up. And they just showed up. Like, people didn't ask me, what do you need? They just showed up, and they like brought food, and they raised money, and they got me acupuncture and massages and like shit that I would never do for myself, even on a good day.
Yeah.
And so it reiterated to me that mutual aid is by far the only way I think we get things done efficiently.
Yes.
Whether it's in crisis or in health and wellness. Like, when we show up for each other, it works. So all of that is to say, I suck at it, but I work hard to do it better each day, because I am a parent. I am a public person who people think, who they seem to think they want to know what I'm doing. And I can't be full of shit about it. I have to say, like, I am in the struggle, and like, and I don't know how to do that particularly gracefully, so there you have it. I don't.
So when I switched my business from personal training to being an opportunity coach, I assumed, with all like the verbiage and like language and everything that I was going to be doing, I'm like, I'm just going to have a lot of women that come. Well, let's be honest. I didn't think I'm going to have a lot of women. I'm like, I'm going to have some female clients. And I work predominantly with men. It's starting to even out a little bit, which is cool. And I'm super thankful to be working with men, because I think that, like, my belief is that a man who is self-aware is not only creates safer and healthier environments, but they can also teach their children and their boys to be healthier and happier and safer. And so my belief is that if we have healthier men, we have safer women and children. And so I'm very happy that I have more predominantly men. But I will say that personally, when I first moved here, because I've been here for 7 years, and then even before that, my friend circle was it was either the women I played volleyball with in college, but it was just a lot of guys. I was always a guy's girl in terms of friends. And the same thing was when I moved here, predominantly male friends. And over the time I've lived here, it's transitioned to like women. And sometimes when I step back and I go, oh, I do wonder. But when you were talking, I was thinking about how I wonder if we need to, if there's a way to work on showing women in their 20s that like you can look successful, be successful, and then also be really honest. Because what you were saying, this idea that we have to be projecting like like, oh my goodness, like my business is doing super well, like look at me, blah blah. But then like there are people that I want that to work with that they're like, well, she probably is priced or she's priced out of me, right? Or like, well, she doesn't need my money, or like, and it's like, no. But also for some reason with my business, like to be successful, you're supposed to portray success, and also in my mindset, I'm trying to portray success, and like, and so there's a lot of like, it's so much back and forth, and
it's a mess.
it really is. But when I think about it, I wonder if me and my female friends, if the circle I have here right now, if we would have been able to show it for each other when we were 25, 28, 30, because like, did we even know ourselves enough to be able to show up? How, like, because now, I mean, it's what you were saying. I just have gotten better at calling and being like, I'm having a bad day. Can you listen? But like before, like a year ago, I would be like, hey, what are you up to? My friend would be like, hey, I'm kind of busy. What's up? And I'm like, nothing. And then I would hang up and just be like, like, and then she'd be like, dude, why didn't you just tell me that you're having a bad day? And I'm like, I don't.
It's
you're
hard.
married. I don't know. You have a dog. And they're like, okay, like, so I do wonder, like, so, hold on, let me get to my question, because I had a question and I went away from it. But my question is, do you think that, because it seems as if there are more women who are kind of okay with not getting married, at least not getting married young, right? But not necessarily getting married, not having kids. Do you think that there needs to be even more of a community for women who are forging their own path in this way that is now becoming the norm, but has been very different and progressive from the past 20, 30 years? Because I think that a lot of men have a better job, or a better ability to like kind of do like boys weekends and hang out with each other and like talk to each other and whatnot. And I think that women do, but the difference is that a lot of our changes are starting to be where we're not showing up for one another because of a breakup. Like there's less male focus in our communities because a lot more of us are owning our own businesses and not having kids, or like going times without dating. So do you think that female communities, they need to be way more like kind of focused in terms of like, oh, I have like my like Black community, I have my micro business community. Like, do you think that that's something that you're seeing that needs to happen more? Like, what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think it's tricky because I think, we have, if you are someone who wants to parent, we have this expiration date scenario that really, really messes with your ability in business, right? Like our country is not set up in a way that supports mothers, period. So like, if I can't get childcare, and like, there's this illusion that we only ask, how are moms doing it all, but we are not asking fathers or partners or whatever, it's very easy to instantly feel overwhelmed. So I do think the overwhelm that women in general experience in business is just already like, it's real, it's challenging, it's legit, right? And then I think so, yes, I mean, I think there is something to say for like kind of affinity groups, but I'm also really leery of like networking stuff. And like, I think I've seen so many women in my circles, who've been really taken advantage of. So I'm more interested in intergenerational stuff. I'm more interested in like connecting with people who are further ahead in their business, as well as, maybe earlier, and like actually like literally what we're going to start doing here. It's not like a paid thing. It's like, we're going to just start meeting up and like sharing information, because that to me is, it's maybe some of this is debunking this like, idea that comparison is the best way, but instead collaboration is actually the best way. Like the reason I've been a success is because I collaborate with everybody. Like I want to collaborate almost to my own detriment sometimes, right? Because I'll be like, I'm always thinking of how is it going to help someone else, and not necessarily how does it help my bottom line. But like even now, I'm 10 years out and I just finally found someone who is like in my niche, who I signed up for her courses, and they're like the first legit worth it coaching or whatever, but it's not even coaching really. It's like niche specific. It's stuff that's going to help me. I've had coaches before. I've had business mentors, whatever. No one has taught me these very basic things. So until this person. And so now that I know that, you bet your ass, I'm sharing that with other people in my circles. So, you know, I think, unfortunately, again, this is a systemic thing that's like, that pits women against each other, because there's this idea that there's scarcity. It's the same in nonprofit. Like there's this idea that there's scarcity. So then they have everybody fight for scraps. So I don't, you know, I do think it's critical, especially for women of color, to have spaces with other women of color where white women are not, because they have 100% different experiences that are not things I can necessarily be an asset to, but there are other ways that I can show up that are. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like, I don't know that I would have gotten the things I didn't know what I needed to know until I knew. And I didn't do any classes. I didn't go a traditional route. I literally was working as a social worker. Our agency got shut down. I was pregnant and I was like, holy crap. Like either I start this thing I was thinking of, or I gotta go get another gig. And I did it. And so like, I literally signed a lease and was open a month later. I didn't have a bunch of money. I didn't take out loans. I didn't do any of the things. I didn't take classes. Like I just started the thing. So there are different groups of people, right? There are people who like went and got their business degree. They do not even speak the same language I do. Then there are people who took a bunch of business courses before they started their business. And then there are those of us who just like threw ourselves in it and we're still learning. And I'm always really clear of like, I'm still learning, man. I just started learning about Google Analytics. I didn't know anything. And so I do think more practical application is critical. And that's something I really want to do in this community space, is like, literally like, who do you use for this? And what do you do when this happens? Like when you have a brick and mortar, you're dealing with way different issues than if you're dealing with
digital.
Exactly. So I don't know. I think it's a mixture, but I do think that people have to be so careful. There's so much predatory stuff and it's cultural, right? It's just like, oh, like if I'm a woman and I go get my car fixed, I know it's going to cost more money. I know. Well, why don't we have more mechanic shops that are run by women?
You know, one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that is, I wish that there was more conversation away from just mindset, or like, you know, give your money to it and then be in it, right? And one thing I absolutely abhor is when someone tries to sell me like whatever they do, like they're a life coach, or they have a program that's going to help me accelerate my income, like this, that, whatever, and then they act like $5,000 or $10,000 is just whatever and
reasonable.
And when you're like, I can't afford that, or that's not where I'm going to put my money, they will just guilt you. And it's this idea that like, well, if you had enough faith and if you trusted enough, and like if you do fewer Starbucks, and it's like, you know, like there's just like so many things that I'm like, who are you selling to, that they're like, I don't know, and then you're like, you know, that Starbucks, like maybe if you get rid of that, like then you're good for this. And it's like,
I can attest. I have fallen for some really crazy stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm saying it's not that hard. Like if you know someone is stressed and vulnerable and they are even worse, desperate.
Yeah.
I mean, I have paid for some of the worst coaching.
Yeah.
I honest to God, that did nothing for my business. And so it is the thing that I will say, and I know some great mindset coaches. I know some great coaches in general. I will never hype a coach I have not worked with ever. Yeah. That's a mistake. But I will say, I think mindset is bullshit unless you're making like foundational if you don't have the foundations and yes. you're making money, the only people you should be paying are people who are going to help you make more money. Period. Yes. Then you can do like, yeah, mindset's great.
Yes.
Like, yeah. But again, it's funny. It's something you don't hear a lot until you are making more money. And then people kind of like, you're on people's radar and then they're going to hit you up. And it is, I mean, it's the same with advertising. People would always be like, oh, this is really reasonable. And it would be like $500 to, you know, I never in 10 years paid for advertising. Never. You. Because it's like, it wasn't worth it. Or like Yelp. I have friends who paid so much money to do like Yelp ads. Yeah. And I'm like, Yelp is literally, if somebody liked it and they Yelped about it, why would you don't need like, yes. Like, what are yes. you doing? So it is, I think, a very vulnerable place to be, especially if you're a solopreneur. You got to find your people. You got to find other people. And my greatest supporters and greatest source of everything that has helped my business has been other micro business owners. And they, you know, unfortunately, the truth is, it's like the people who show up for your business are not your friends and family. Mm-hmm. They're not like, they never, I have so many, the majority of my family has never once spent a dime in my shop. My friends will show up for like a big party, but like, that's it. Like I have a handful of friends and that feels so frustrating, but you just have to like, you just got to get through it because some of my closest friends are people I literally who came through the shop, who like I would shoot the shit with, and then we would connect about something, or someone I was on a panel with or whatever. Yeah. And they're like my biggest supporters, and they spend money, and other business owners will spend money with you.
It's interesting because the other aspect is, and when you mentioned networking before, and I think like when I like the thing I was trying to drill down to, but I couldn't quite get there, was this idea of like just like really connective. So past networking, but to an actual community of women who are like, yes, I am growing, but I also very much need to keep growing, but I also very much want to like be like the elevated version of whatever, you know, like, and how do you navigate that? And how do I present that and other, you know, business owners and things. But the other side of it is that if you're in a community, then when you do go and you're talking to someone, because the predatory nature of even just connecting with people in your own community, you're worried, are they just selling me? Are they just going to sell me? Okay, like, yeah, here's my email. And they're going to be like, hey, I think like your business would be so great. It's just going like $1,000 a month. I can get, and you're like, I don't know, like, no, you know, like, and so I get what you're saying because yeah, like it would be really, really nice. And that, I guess that would be like a kind of micro business or solopreneur soft space to be able to know I'm talking to people who are readily going to give me advice and help, not sell me on anything, not pressure me on anything, and not just tell me like, I don't think that you're believing enough in it. I think that's the problem.
Oh, you know, like, but they'll also give you, I think there's two things. One is you have to have people who will give you real feedback.
Yes.
You have to create a space where they know that you really, really are going to accept it.
Yeah.
So like I have friends who are like, please come and tell me what you really think. And I'll be like, yo, your labels are unreadable, or like whatever, like what did you think to do? You know, have you considered like, hey, your thing is made in Colorado. You got to put made in Colorado, or whatever you know, whatever it might be, right? Like people who want practical stuff. I think it's incredibly important, and it saves people a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And then, it's 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 tricky. It's really tricky. The other thing people do not talk about is numbers. So
Sure.
like, I'm super open about numbers, because it's like, okay, what do I charge for consulting versus what do I charge? How much money were we bringing in for Hope Tank in 2017? Well, let me tell you, after 2017, it started to take a nosedive. So it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
There were indicators, and I have several friends who had businesses down on our hop and block who pieced, because they had been doing it for 18, 20 years, and they saw a shift in how retail was going.
Yeah.
Now, my income and then the cost for running retail is staggering. So it's crazy. So that's really, I don't recommend it. I'm not gonna, I don't like, I do not recommend a traditional brick and mortar retail without a hook. Like, if you sell coffee, or if you have something else that they come for and then they buy things, great. But if you don't have a hook, good luck. I mean, for real. Like,
I mean, it does make me sad, like, because and I was actually laughing. So when I moved to where I live now on South Broadway, I am next to right now it's empty. And it was this tattoo shop. I won't necessarily say the name, but uh and I laughed because it was closed, and I had actually gotten a tattoo done there like 2 years before or something. And when I was like, oh my goodness, it's closed. I didn't realize it. And I went onto their Instagram, and it said closed due to gentrification. But I was laughing because they have like 6 locations. And I want to be like, but technically, aren't you like, like that seems weird, like, and it does make me like bummed out when I go down the street and I'll see businesses turning over. And obviously, like, some people shouldn't have a business, or business just doesn't work. Brick and mortars are very, very hard. But yeah, like when like you left, and just like across the street where it was a buy sell trade, Buffalo Exchange. And like I just look around, and I'm like, it's just such a bummer, because I get people who have lived in Denver for 20, 30, 40 years, how they can be like, yeah, this isn't cool, right? Like, I get it. And it makes me wonder how a lot of businesses, like, the gentrification that will take place, how that's going to shape the landscape of things, because I can only assume that South Broadway will become a little more hoity-toity, right? Like, they're raising my rent, and that was like a catalyst for me, where I was like, well, I mean, I'm 100% not going to pay that much to live here. So like, I'm moving, and that's totally cool. But it also makes me feel like, well, I bet there's any day now where like this area gets bought up and then knocked down and then built up, and it makes me sad for just the area itself, because it's such a cool area. So okay, anyway, not to harp on that, because I think you're super dope. So as you said, you have changed over your business, and now you are in the digital space. And so can you please tell us what are you doing now, and what is your mission? I mean, I'm sure the mission is the same, but like, how is it, how are you doing things differently now? So anybody that's listening and they're like, what, Hope Tank closed?
Yes, I know. Well, a lot of people are like that, because again, social media is a tricky thing. We do have a newsletter, so people can sign up for the newsletter. You can opt in on our website, so you can stay abreast of all the things. So what we learned was a couple things. One, our community space was incredibly important to people. So that was something, when I found this place, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect, because literally we are devoting half of the space to community gatherings. So whether that's a yoga class or a workshop, or like we're doing book signings, there's all kinds of things. We're creating an accessible, affordable space so people can host things there. And then for our retail business, we are fully online. We ship all over. We are really focused on gift boxes and gift sets. So that is what people have wanted forever, these curated boxes. So depending on the person, right? So, you know, if you want like Father's Day is coming up. So like we'll have a couple different boxes you can pick, but you can also just order stuff and we'll ship it. Or we can make a basket and you can do a pickup, a curbside pickup. We will only be open for the public to come in on Sundays. We're going to try out a micro business, like we're doing Small Biz Sundays.
Yeah.
So we'll have like 4 or 5 of our micro businesses popped up in our community space and outside. And then you will be able to, like, you know, behind me, I've got stuff. You'll be able to make your own gift.
Cool.
And then we started subscriptions, and it was like, I wasn't quite ready for how fast that was going to grow. So, which is great. So we are relaunching subscriptions. So you'll be able to have a Hope Tank subscription that shows up every month. And those will be like specific things that you can't get, you know, on our site. And then we, you know, thanks to COVID, I had been wanting to do this, like get a laser machine so we can make our own custom stuff. And so we were able to get this little baby laser and start and learn. And now I'm hoping we can raise some money and get this other laser that will allow us to like customize things on the spot. So like if you hosted something, we could literally engrave and make mugs right then and there.
That's very cool.
You could put whatever you want on it. So that's another component that we're really looking at. And then for me, I'm really turning up the volume on like my consulting work. So I am really looking at how do I work with more businesses, with more I really want to work with athletes on what they're, and you know, kind of celebrities, if you will, like what do they really give a shit about and how are they leveraging that opportunity in a way that makes them happy? Because I feel like a lot of you know, notable people are, it's really this like assumption about what they care about. There's this expectation that's very obligatory and performative. And I want to help people shift out of that and into like a more meaningful experience. Because as I've learned, if people really connect to it, they care more and then they want to do more.
Yeah.
So rather than just writing a check, it's like, how do you show up differently? So that's kind of the focus. And I've gotten an opportunity to start writing for Westward. I'm doing like small business features and things like that. So yeah, it's a shift. So but it's really building on what has worked.
I just feel like you're saying all that. I'm just thinking like Erika Righter, person who does like everything. Like that's like that's your title.
All the things. I know. Well, this is my lack of balance. My hope is that on the retail end, we have like a full-time position that, you know, is doing that.
Yeah.
You know, so expanding those opportunities. But again, it's like starting a little bit over, but with so much more knowledge.
Yeah. And intention, I'm sure as well. That's all amazing. I have tons of questions for me personally that I will happily ask you offline.
Cool.
But so, okay, I want to wrap this up with my 2 favorite questions. First question is, how do you desire to better show up for others?
I am attempting to honestly to rest more so that I show up with more calm energy.
I was hoping you were going to say that, actually. And then how do you desire to better show up for yourself?
Yeah, I mean the same probably, right? Which benefits me, and those around me.
Yes.
But I'm also okay. Like the truth is too, with this horrendous experience that I've just gone through, my best friend who was killed, she even wrote this right before she died. No regrets, right? And not in like a corny way. Like she showed up and lived her life. Like she forced me, she's the one who forced me, she had me literally book this trip a year ago. She rested, she lived hard, she had zero regrets, she enjoyed the shit out of her kid and her life. And she also really pushed her spiritual practices. She's an indigenous healer, and she taught me a lot. And so, you know, really for me, it's practicing more of what I've been taught by her.
I love that. I love that. Not to drone on too much, but one of the things that I have personally been working on so much more is um, operating more in my 10%, the top 10%, and less than the 90. And I am trying to figure out, I want to create like a series and a program for it of stripping that idea, stripping it of like the douchebagginess that I think has been associated to it, you know, like operate at a high level, like that type of stuff. But it's this idea of like, how much time do I spend in a day, in a week, in a month where I'm just kind of like, I guess I'll just eat that. I guess I'll just do that. I guess I'll just like, and really not like living like fully, or living in my body fully, or connecting with people fully. Like it took a lot of work for me, because I'm sure, as you know, where we do things and we feel like we have a schedule and we have to be on top of everything. And then when someone starts talking to you, you'll be like, I love like, I just like, I don't have time for it, you know, like, and I just started adopting this idea of like, if God wants me to be talking to this person, I'm showing up for this conversation. And if I have to bump something to the next day to really be here for it, then like, you know, that's what it is. So I actually really love that you shared that. Thank you very much. Is there anything that you want to share or say before we sign off?
Just, you know, if you can show up for Hope Tank, that allows us to show up for a lot of work. And so, you know, knowing that when you are intentional about how you spend your dollars and who you spend those dollars with, it has a massive ripple effect. And that we underestimate like that effect that we have as one human. It has massive effect. And so, yeah, I just encourage people to really take a look at the flow of dollars.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I like that. Thank you so very much for showing up for this conversation and being here. If you are listening, whether you are in Denver, Colorado, or outside of, all of Erika's information will be in the show notes, and it will be on all the social media whenever this is posted, so you can find her. And I ask you definitely to check out her website, because it's super awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.